It's up to the press to ask Martin McGuinness the extent to which he is bluffing or the extent to which he is threatening the institutions. I find it quite remarkable that somebody can make remarks such as the institutions being in free fall, meltdown, deepening crisis, and then go on to indicate that the institutions are unsustainable without being cross-examined by the press as to exactly what the threat is that he's implying. I know if it was me that had made those remarks, I'd be getting cross-examined by the press day and daily until I indicated what my intentions were. I think he needs to come out very clearly and tell us what he is saying. Is he saying he's going to bring down the institutions? Because I think the community in Northern Ireland will be very unhappy with any person or any party that threatens the institutions.
But if there is blame, some of that blame may well attach to you.
Why should it? I mean, the press make these comments, but clearly don't think about what they are saying. Why should any blame be attached to the DUP or any of the other political parties in the Assembly, none of whom are indicating that they're walking away? We are here for the long haul. We're wanting to make the institutions work. We want to see progress being made. We want to see Northern Ireland peace, stability and prosperity. We're not threatening anybody.
But the long haul is the problem here. Sinn Féin sold the whole idea of support for policing and the fact that policing and justice would be devolved. You know how difficult that was for them. They're not seeing any progress on that issue.
Well,
and therefore
if
that's why
Sinn
we're at this problem.
Féin oversold what they thought they could achieve, then they are answerable, of course, to those to whom they sold that package. The reality is that they weren't entitled to sell it. The St Andrews Agreement was clear. There was no commitment to any date for policing and justice in the St Andrews Agreement. Immediately the agreement was published. Dr. Paisley, on behalf of the party with his colleagues around him, indicated very clearly that the Democratic Unionist Party had not signed up for any particular date for policing and justice. But because it was a party priority to get policing and justice, we would continue to work towards it. We have, in the legislation at Westminster, got clear conditions which allow us to determine when and why we would move forward with policing and justice. So that they had no right to be indicating to anybody that policing and justice would come in a particular period of time. We weren't under any commitment to do so whatsoever.
But your critics say that you have now over-negotiated. You have dug in that you could have moved to agree a date for the devolution of policing and justice. And you should have done that perhaps whenever you secured the financial package.
Well, those who want to have policing and justice come what may might well say that. Those who want to have it in the right circumstances will not. There are issues that we still have not settled with Sinn Féin. Let's be clear, we got to the stage where we were wanting to deal with three key outstanding issues. One was the identification of a justice minister. And we've asked for meetings to deal with that issue. We've sent drafts of the letter that could be sent out, and eventually we have got that matter resolved. The next issue that we have to deal with is the relationship between the Justice Minister and the Executive. Who takes what decisions? What decisions have to come to the Executive? Clearly matters such as finance would have to come to the Executive, and the DUP Finance Minister would have to bring proposals forward to the Executive. If there are cross-cutting issues, whether it's drugs or whatever else, because there would be a health component and a policing component, clearly it has to come to the Executive. But let's be very clear, there is no cabinet anywhere in a Western democracy that would bring policing and justice matters for decision at a cabinet meeting. So we need to decide very clearly that all quasi-judicial matters would be remaining with the Minister to take on his or her own. Matters that required urgent decision would have to be taken by that Minister. You couldn't have them waiting for 6 months till Sinn Féin have their meetings all around the country to decide whether they say yes or no to a proposition. So clearly there are very limited matters that would come to the Executive, but we have to settle those between Sinn Féin, ourselves and the other parties in the Executive. Then there are the issues such as policing and justice, having had a key element of the parading issue. It was Sinn Féin, let's be very clear, it was Sinn Féin that tied these two issues together. Parading should have been resolved long ago, but Sinn Féin held it back by saying that it was necessary to have policing and justice powers devolved before we could agree to the Ashdown proposals and move forward on that basis. So they tied parading to policing and justice. So we need to get those matters resolved, and then we can consult the community and consult the other political parties.
But the Ashdown report isn't an agreed report. Not all of the people have signed up to it in full.
The interim report, which was published, was an agreed report, with the Sinn Féin representative's signature attached to it. So let's be very clear, it was held back because they were waiting for policing and justice powers to be devolved. Now they want to hold on to it so they can sell it for some other horse. We're not in that game. They tied policing and justice and parading together, therefore it has to be dealt with.
So, if you don't get Sinn Féin to agree to the Ashdown proposals, the deal's off, basically.
Well, Sinn Féin had already. I mean, they can try and dance on the head of a pin now if they wish, but they had signed up to the Ashdown review. Clearly, they've been marking time until policing and justice came along. And I see nothing in the Ashdown proposals that should be difficult for Sinn Féin to accept.
The Chief Constable has said that he supports in principle the devolution of policing and justice. He thinks it would be good. He also thinks that the financial package that you've negotiated would give him some certainty. So do you not have to listen to voices like his?
It's a voice I agree with. I want to have policing and justice powers devolved. I agree with it in principle. I believe that the package that was negotiated is a good package, and the sooner we can move ahead with policing and justice, the better. But that doesn't remove the requirement to deal with the outstanding issues. The Chief Constable, nor indeed anybody else in Northern Ireland, is not going to thank me or anybody else if we devolve the powers for policing and justice without resolving the outstanding issues. So let's get down to work. Let's deal with the outstanding issues instead of issuing threats and going into a tantrum.
Is it now time for hothouse talks?
I don't think there's any need for any house to be hot in these circumstances. People should cool down. It might be better. The outstanding business is there. We know what needs to be done. Let's get down to doing the job.
Do you want an early election? Again, some of the cynics observing how you've negotiated here suspect, perhaps, that the DUP has decided to throw in an unreasonable demand or one that they know Sinn Féin couldn't accede to in order to force things to an election.
Well, your question's based on a false premise. The DUP didn't throw in the issue of parading. Sinn Féin linked parading and policing and justice together, and now we're requiring them to divvy up on what they had promised. They delayed parading. I mean, how reasonable would it be? Because, I mean, this is the other side of the coin. How reasonable would it be if I was to be saying, look, we're in meltdown. Unless we can get parading sorted out, the institutions are unsustainable. How would it be if I was to say, because you haven't dealt with parading, we've got a deepening crisis? Because that's the other side of this coin. I'm not saying that. I'm behaving reasonably and sensibly. It is those who are threatening the institutions who are being unreasonable.
Sinn Féin see this as a measure of your respect for equality.
Every political party has their own agenda. Every political party has issues that they want to have settled. And there will be many occasions when political parties will not be able to achieve that which they set out to achieve. And simply because Sinn Féin has a demand and can't get other parties to agree with their demand isn't an example of inequality. It means that they haven't been able to pursue their political agenda, or at least that aspect of it. There's no requirement on me to meet the demands of Sinn Féin and to fulfil their political agenda. I have to do what I believe is best for the people of Northern Ireland. And I have to say, I don't think an Irish Language Act is in the best interest of the people of Northern Ireland. I want people to have the richness of culture that comes from the recognition that Ulster Scots and the Irish language can be pursued and can be developed. But that doesn't require an Irish Language Act to have that done. Equally, I'm quite content for many other aspects of the Sinn Féin agenda, where I believe it is in the interest of the community as a whole to be met. But where I don't believe it to be in the interest of the community, I'm not going to give them any assistance to have it fulfilled.
Are we at the stage now where we have to say that the experiment of putting Sinn Féin and the DUP in charge has failed, that the whole thing needs to be renegotiated?
Why? Because there are one or two issues outstanding. We have agreed more issues in the executive, of which Sinn Féin and the DUP are the two largest parties, than the Ulster Unionist Party and the SDLP executive over the same period of time. We have dealt with about 50% more issues than the Ulster Unionists and SDLP did. So we have a wider and longer list of agreements than our predecessors. That would indicate a higher level of success. More than that, I have to say that there are things that we've been able to do which direct rule ministers would never have done if they had been in control in Northern Ireland. So there are real advantages in having devolution to Northern Ireland. That's not to say it's perfect, that's not to say it's operating smoothly. How could it with the kind of system that we have?
Will this Assembly see out its full term?
Well, I can't read the minds of Sinn Féin, and you're not asking them the question so that I can make that judgment. All I can say is that from our part, we're not walking away. From our part, we want it to work. we'll be there, we'll be doing the job, and if others walk away, then they can take the retribution of the community.